your customers spend, $1,000 on third party channel. Right now you're making $100 per year on that customer, right? If they order direct, you would make 300,
Right.
right, per year on that customer.
Right.
Are you willing to spend $50 to convert that customer?
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Data Delicacies, where we bring the best and brightest in the industry to talk all things data, all things tech, all things hospitality. I'm your host, Arun. This is powered by Incentivio. Today, we have a very, very special guest, someone who we hang out in the same football fantasy league, and where we're just chatting about, but we're both having a pretty rough go. But so it goes to fantasy football. But I do have here Andrew Nakkache, who is the CEO and co-founder of First Delivery. Andrew, thanks for joining on. How are you?
Thanks for having me, everyone. Appreciate it. I'm doing great.
Good.
Besides the fantasy football league.
Yes, yes, I know. But hey, multiple leagues, hopefully something will happen, and there's always next year. So it ends up always being a crapshoot with all the players and injuries and everything that goes on. So, Andrew, you guys have had a hell of a year, and I definitely want to talk about the cool stuff that you're doing there over first. But before that, the theme of today's podcast is about delivery logistics and how the expectations have grown immensely from, consumers, from vendors, from customers, all across the board, right? So would love to get your take on what you're seeing and how you guys are attacking that problem today.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of how the market has evolved, first off, food delivery is not a new thing. It just evolved. And back in 2010, you could order food on the internet, and there was Grubhub, Eat24, Seamless. And the difference between now and then is back then the restaurant always had to do the delivery. And so typically you only saw like Chinese and pizza back in 2010. And then in 2011, the iPhone 4S came out. And when that happened, it enabled geolocation tracking. And that's what really introduced us to Uber. And then once Uber and Lyft launched their ride hailing services, that opened up the opportunity for, wow, we can now really take a tech enabled approach to food delivery. And then in 2013, DoorDash launched, Postmates, Caviar, and so on. And they really spent the last decade scaling up, right? And scaling up their fleets, being able to offer logistics efficiently, became public companies, and so on. And then in 2020, when the pandemic happened, the market kind of evolved again, where DoorDash and Uber Eats and Grubhub all fully unbundled, where you could use them just for getting orders, right? And a lot of pizzerias will, use DoorDash and Uber Eats for just generate orders, and they'll do the delivery, or you could use them for just delivery.
Yeah.
And so, we started out as a fleet back in the day, and then in 2021, once Uber and DoorDash launched their delivery APIs, we said, oh, wow, this is really interesting. We can re-architect our platform so that we can take any order and send it to any fleet. So we can take orders and send them to DoorDash or to Uber or to local fleets or your own fleet.
And that's interesting, right? Because I think about, back in the day, used to be, a guy on a scooter delivering pizza, and they had the rules of like, under 30, or certain places are like, hey, 30 minutes or it's free, right? And now it's like our expectations are like, hey, if I don't have an app, if I can't track it in real time, if I can't see the guy coming in, it's almost like our expectations like, hey, it has to be 30 minutes regardless. So, with some of the orchestration stuff you're doing, are you seeing that with all the tech out there, are some of the customers you're working with, are they almost like overwhelmed, and are they trying to be everywhere they can because they don't want to miss out on an opportunity? Or how are you seeing some of your customers attack this kind of like marketplace versus logistical delivery side, like attacking both of those things?
It's interesting. For our biggest customers, what we've seen is that a lot of them, so like for example, we work with a 50 location pizzeria, and for them, I didn't get their consent, so I don't want to name drop them right now. But for them, they are getting orders from Uber Eats, from DoorDash, from their own website, over the phone, right? All those orders come into their POS. And then from there, It's like, okay, how do we actually dispatch these orders? And they've always had their own drivers. So before they only had their online ordering and call-ins, they turned on DoorDash and Uber Eats as additional lead gen channels so they can get more orders, keep
Right.
their internal fleet busier. But then they got to this problem where they didn't always have their own drivers. And so they had to throttle delivery, turn off delivery, and so on, which is not a great customer experience. And you go to order from your favorite pizza shop one Friday and then the next Friday they're closed,
Yeah.
you're going to lose customers that way.
Yeah.
And so then once Uber and DoorDash really open up the ability to dispatch orders to those fleets, that allows restaurants to always offer delivery, with their own fleet or external fleets.
Got it. So usually, I mean, the demand side is something that's always been there to turn on and off, but the tougher side is actual logistics of like, hey, whether it's your own drivers or if I'm getting to tap into this whole, Uber, DoorDash, Grubhub world, or if I go another third party, how much are you seeing folks actually hire their own drivers?
I think that if a restaurant is doing, call it at least 50 deliveries per day, right? 30 to 50, really. It's more about, if they're doing 30 deliveries a day, there's enough deliveries during that dinner rush to keep their drivers busy and maybe they have a little lunch shift as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's really that I would say like at least 30. At 50, it starts to become more efficient where they can keep their own drivers at that kind of golden 3 deliveries per driver per hour metric.
Got
And
it.
then as soon as they get a little bit too busy, they can use systems like ours to automatically dispatch those orders to external fleets.
Interesting. I didn't, that golden rule piece is interesting. I was always wondered what the like ideal standard is. And I guess, how are you seeing folks do things in more bigger metros versus like some more rural areas? Because I know it's a very different world as you look at like a New York versus like a North Dakota, for example.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's going to depend on, I would say Uber and DoorDash are available pretty much anywhere in the US, right? But in markets like New York, you're going to have fleets like Relay and MotoQuick and Delivered and Delivered That. So you'll have more fleet options. The other thing that we're starting to see as well is restaurants are starting to, subcontract delivery drivers from other fleets where they can get a dedicated driver. So I can it's kind of like having their own drivers
Hmm.
without having to deal with hiring, insurance, recruiting, like all the stuff that makes having your own drivers really difficult, right? That goes away. And then those drivers are coming right back to the restaurant. And
Interesting.
what that means is that when that delivery driver is dedicated for a 3 hour block or a 4 hour block, that creates this level of accountability. It's really like a psychology thing where because that driver has to come right back to the restaurant after they do 1 or 2 deliveries, they're probably not going to smell like weed and they're probably not going to wear sandals and all these things that get restaurant owners so upset. And if you're a
Right.
pizzeria, now you can give that delivery driver a pizza bag, and you don't have to worry about never seeing that pizza bag again, right? They're going to come right back. And so I think that's where we think the future of delivery is kind of going is for restaurants where delivery is a big part of their business. They having your own drivers, the reason why it's beneficial is because it helps drive retention. That's the biggest reason why it still makes sense to have your own drivers.
Because it's an extension of the brand. And, sometimes if it's someone just, I mean, I'm sure we've all experienced it. I think I just experienced this weekend where, you'll see someone just drop it off the driveway and it's like, peace out, right? Versus like, hey, are they knocking on the door? Are they making sure they hand you over the delivery? Is it coming in a warm bag? Like all those things, especially now in, I'm in Toronto. It gets cold this time of year. And if you leave something out there, sometimes they don't even ring the bell, right? They just drop it off and go. So if I'm not paying attention, my order is sitting outside, it's freezing, and the food gets all cold, and then it's like, oh, well. And then most people, I mean, because we're in the industry, we get it. But what I've learned is a lot of people that don't understand how delivery logistics work, they order through DoorDash, but they're blaming the restaurant. Oh, this restaurant sucks. It's the restaurant's fault. But it's almost like that pass off from the food going to there the restaurant's done their job in terms of getting the food over, but then sometimes that brand, to your point, like someone I've heard people say, yeah, I'll never order from this place again because of this, but it's like it's not even their fault.
100%. And that's, I think the fundamental problem in the industry is that it's hard to find accountability when there's so many humans in the loop. Maybe you didn't answer your phone, Arun, this weekend because you were on Do Not Disturb, right? So sometimes it's the customer's fault. Sometimes, there's also a lot of fraud in the industry as well,
Mm,
where consumers will say, I never got my food,
yeah.
even though they did, right?
Yeah.
It happens a lot on college campuses. So I think like this industry has a lot of challenges, and I think it's really about how do you introduce accountability in a thoughtful way. Um, so that's what we think needs to happen.
Nice. That's I know that at first, I mean, y'all have been doing some great stuff over there. Talk about the story of first. Like, why did you start this, approaching this in the first place, and how's that evolved? I know you mentioned kind of like some of the stuff you did with Uber and DoorDash changed your thing, but how has your kind of ethos evolved over time as well?
Yep. So for us as a company, so we started at Temple University in Philadelphia. So yes, we're a little bit tougher than those Penn kids. There's four of us, Alex and myself on the sales side, JP and Mike on the technical side. And we started when we went to school. We were roommates in college. When we originally started the company way back when we were building a DoorDash for college campuses. This is back in 2015. DoorDash just raised their Series A in 2014. And we said, wow, if we deliver just on our campus, we can deliver faster, cheaper, and better. I mean, I remember one time, we had a delivery driver that was able to do 7 deliveries per hour
Wow.
because Temple, it's 5 by 5 blocks where there's 50 restaurants and food trucks all in that range. And so that business, the problem with it is we weren't able to get enough volume. So we went to Penn and Drexel while we were still in school to launch there. And at the same time, Uber and DoorDash came to Philadelphia.
Mm,
And so there was no way for us to build the business. One time I had an investor share with me that, hey, Andrew, if you can't get this business to, $85,000 in revenue per month or $1 million run rate in a reasonable amount of time, that this is just not a business worth doing. And we didn't see any path to get there.
mm,
And then I'll try to make this brief because it's a pretty long story. So then we graduated college in 2016. Around the same time, there was a company called Zoomer that went through Y Combinator. They went from 0 to 19 markets. They were actually based in Philadelphia, and they did this delivery as a service model where they were delivering orders that came from Grubhub, Eat24,
mm,
Seamless, Eat Street, and they would do the delivery. And they had a lot of success. And it was delivery as a service. Consumers wouldn't know about it, just the restaurant. So once we saw what they were doing, they actually went out of business. We said, oh, well, they went out of business, but maybe we can take a crack at it. And we started doing it. We instantly got traction. Restaurants wanted it. And so over the course of the next 5 years, we grew that business to 50,000 deliveries a month. We were doing about $3 million in revenue, a little under $1 million after paying our own drivers. But then we didn't see a path to scale it.
mm.
We went through Y Combinator, raised some money, but we didn't see a path of going from 3 to 10 million in revenue in the next 12 months without, raising 5 million. And
Yeah.
we just didn't see it, didn't seem scalable. And at the same time, this is 2021, right? Uber and DoorDash said, hey, we'll, open up our delivery APIs. And then we're like, wow, well, if we can still offer a similar value proposition where we do delivery as a service, but we don't have to do the delivery, well,
Right.
that would be great. We've already built this whole platform, and it's multi-tenant, can support restaurant chains and different types of customers who have their own restaurant customers. And then it just became a no-brainer. We went back to our existing investors and said, hey, we know we've raised $3 million, but to do this pivot successfully, we're going to need another million. They gave us the million, and then we were able to go from 50,000 deliveries a month down to zero to now more than double that amount before, and
Nice.
we're growing fast. Company's profitable. It's a much better business. We can we're not open 20 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I mean, congrats to you guys. It's obviously pivoting, with the way that things change so quickly. I think that's important to be able to do that and stay nimble, especially with stuff that's so, elastic to what consumers are needing, right? Like delivery and for restaurants, how important that is as part of their brand. What I want to ask you this, and been seeing some stuff come up around the possibility of like drone deliveries, right? And robots doing little deliveries in major cities. Do you see that becoming a real thing in the near future at all? And does that further complicate how delivery logistics are going to be?
That's a timely question. I mean, people are freaking out about the drone in New Jersey, which is pretty funny. But I don't know. I mean, I think drones are complicated. Again, consumers are bad at answering their phones when they have a delivery, right? There's a lot of challenges there to drone delivery. I mean, eventually it's going to happen. I think it's more of a question when, not if. And if is it closer to 5 years or closer to 15, right?
Right.
I don't know. It's a big question mark. I think a lot of these drone companies out there, it's like nice PR, right? When Chick-fil-A launches with drone delivery or whatever it is, or Domino's, it's mostly like a PR stunt, it feels like, just to
Yeah.
like try to boost the stock or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Um, I don't know how scalable it really is or how effective it is. I've talked to a lot of these companies, um, but it's tough to know, how scalable it can be done. I mean, I'm sure. I think that what you're going to start to see with delivery evolve more so is more to what DoorDash is doing with their local commerce program. They launched this program pretty quietly, where they hired some ex-Amazon people, and this program is really interesting. So, Amazon, when you see that Amazon truck do that delivery to your house, well, there's actually over 3,000 different Amazon delivery service partners. Is what they call them
Yeah.
throughout the U.S. And so those delivery service partners, I can be a delivery service partner for Amazon in Seattle, but I'm not able to actually also be a partner in Portland. And so what Amazon does is they partner with these delivery service partners where essentially they license their brand and the vehicles to a local business provider and subsidize it and get it running. And it does a couple of things for Amazon. One, they're able to offer a really reliable service because those delivery drivers are now more like on a team, right? Their boss is local. They're not just like a completely independent person that doesn't have any teammates and so on. And so it's more reliable. One, and then two, they also are able to kind of circumvent any liability as well. And so I think that you're going to see that model really start to take on throughout the U.S., especially as these delivery marketplaces start to move beyond food,
Yeah.
right? If I'm delivering a TV, right, it's much better to do that with someone who's more accountable than an independent contractor who might just keep that TV and has themselves a nice Christmas present.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because in Canada, I think, here in Toronto, there are no Amazon trucks. It's all done through third parties. So every time I get delivered,
Wow.
yeah, I think there's like two or three different ones. But it's never an Amazon truck. It's never an Amazon employee. They always like third party it out. And actually, it's interesting because I think, right now, my fellow Canadians will resonate. Whoever's listening that's from Canada. So there's the postal workers all on strike. So a lot of companies have third party that out to other people. But that optionality is there. And I think that's what I'm trying to say is like before there was like, I think about even back in the day, like Pizza Hut. You had a Pizza Hut delivery person, and if that person's not there, then you don't have anything. But I think the optionality now is there because there are so many of these like third-party services that are willing to do the delivery and the logistics, and they just work on the fleet. And I think it's like it goes down. I think this concept of like specialization, right? Like you have, the pizza restaurant makes their food, then you have a specialty, person that does the orchestration, then you have someone that does just the fleet stuff. And I think that specialization is becoming more and more as part of like the whole supply chain, which to your point, there's a lot of humans involved, there's a lot of complication and things, but that's kind of it looks like that's the path we're going for a lot of these things now.
No, I agree. I think that, and I think that like delivery and shipping are going to converge more or less. You're also starting to see what's interesting in the restaurant industry where certain restaurants are like I don't know if you noticed this, but you can go on giordano's.com and ship yourself a pizza, right? A frozen pizza. And so I think you're going to start to see restaurant brands also start to get more into like the shipping business as well.
Yeah.
And shipping's just really just slower delivery. And if you have a good enough brand presence, right, you can have customer demand all across the country. And I think it's important for technology companies to make it very easy. So when the customer calls and they say, Wismo, where's my order? It doesn't matter if it's a shipping order or a delivery order. They have one simple place to manage all their deliveries and take care of customer support as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that. We see that a ton on our side, right? Especially working with folks, doing loyalty marketing campaigns. We're seeing the kind of commerce section, merchandise section of what customers do grow, right? Coffee brands want to sell their beans, they want to sell mugs, they want to sell equipment to go make coffee at home. A lot of places are doing merch now, right? Either like ongoing stuff or limited edition drops. Wineries will want to sell stuff. Like I think so. A lot of folks like, hey, can you integrate into Shopify because we also have this, and then that way your market now just isn't whoever's in the vicinity to get food. It's also like, hey, we have someone that wants to buy a hoodie or they want to buy a hat or they want to buy an apron or what. There's like the stuff is endless. And I think it's cool because it really helps build your brand. But then to your point, it's that line between delivery and shipping and how can they kind of accommodate both. So we've been working with the clients a lot of that stuff, but it's funny you bring that up because we're seeing that way more now than ever before.
For sure. Yeah, I think like Chick-fil-A had like launched a whole merch store over the past year or something. It's pretty like with a
Yeah.
bunch of jokes and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah,
we'll
McDonald's
see.
has done. I mean, McDonald's have done like Travis Scott collabs, and I've seen people like put the fries, the fries from the Travis Scott collab in a Ziploc bag, and then try to sell for like thousands on thing. It's all about like buying and reselling stuff now, but it's pretty cool. I think actually the a famous one here was Tim Hortons did one with Justin Bieber, which is called Tim Biebs, and it was huge. Like they had like fanny packs and toques, and like people were reselling that stuff for like hundreds and hundreds of bucks over. But again, it just shows like to your
Wow.
point. Actually, Tim Hortons has a whole merchandise store now, which is interesting because they never had that stuff before, but it's cool to see. Um, Want to take a step back here and just kind of chat through what excites you in the industry, right? What are some of the stuff you've seen? Obviously this year has been an interesting year in tech and in the economy and everything that's been going on. But, especially when it comes to the hospitality space, what's some tech you're seeing or you've seen, either through your connections or through the shows or just reading on the news that excites you that you think is like, hey, this is going to be some cool stuff to keep an eye out for, either next year or in the upcoming years?
Yeah, I think a couple of the things. It is interesting to see what DoorDash is doing. We'll see how Uber, reacts to that as well, and if DoorDash rolls that out more broadly with the local commerce program. I think that the catering space really still feels like a blue ocean out of the whole area. I think it's just I think that a lot of restaurants today, most of them are on Easy Cater. I think there's like over 100,000 restaurants on Easy Cater. So when we talk to restaurants, they're usually on Easy Cater. But if you're in these metro markets like Boston, DC, New York, LA, there's a lot of these other marketplaces as well, like, Cater Cow, Zero Cater, Fuda, Foodsby, all these different companies. That if I was a restaurant, I would be on those lead gen channels too. But it needs to be easy for your kitchen and you need to have delivery logistics figured out. And then I think that really it's interesting to see like all these different online ordering companies start to come out with catering specific solutions because I mean
Yeah.
these order values are so huge. It's a $500 order. If you can get 10 orders a month, right? That's $5,000. And the margins are so much stronger because you can prep cook way ahead of time. Your labor cost is down, your food cost is fixed and so on. And so they're just way, way more profitable orders than today. So I think catering is really exciting. Um, I think there's a few other areas too, but I don't know if you want to speak to catering at all too and what you're seeing.
Yeah, yeah, no, see a ton of requests on our side. I think the to your point now with, people, especially with people going back to the office in the metros, you go back to office usually a few times a week you're catering lunches and all the office buildings are starting to do that now and I think there's way more of a mandate to go back to the office and I think with things kind of getting, post-pandemic recovery, everything getting back to where it was, we're seeing a huge influx of folks that want to do catering. And it's almost become a necessary part of the business, right? It's a very important way to keep revenues up because to your point, the margins are way higher on those orders. And some folks just have, I mean, we have customers that just have like a few brick and mortar places, but then just a catering location because that's what all they want to focus on and that's what they're
Yep.
really good. So yeah, definitely seeing a lot more of that, and I think it's only going to continue to get bigger. As I think a lot of it ties back with folks having to go back to the office.
No, for sure. I mean, I think that that's a really interesting point you just brought up. I know that Starbucks is running a lot of their delivery off-site locations
Hmm.
versus actually at the store because their stores are already so busy and so on and so forth. GoPuff is doing a lot of the distribution for that as well. And there are Starbucks baristas that are working out of GoPuff. Maybe they're baristas who didn't like talking to people as much, but they make a great coffee, right? So I think that you're going to start to see more and more of that, as well as just restaurants starting to care about data. I think that it's really interesting. I think that I know it's the name of the podcast, but I think for the longest time, restaurants have been so busy. They're working long hours. 12-hour work days. They barely have an energy to mop the floor at the end of the day. You know, Looking at the data is like the last thing you want to do after a long day. Your brain is fried. But I think it's really interesting that restaurants are starting to care about data. It'll
Yeah.
be very interesting to see how things evolve over the next 5 years because they're still not getting their data from the big marketplaces. I think that's like the only thing that I feel negatively about at all. If I was like a restaurant about the marketplace, is the biggest thing is the data. And it'll be interesting to see how that evolves and if restaurants start to care that 50% of their customers are anonymous, which is wild. If 50% of your customers are my
Right.
customers, I didn't know who they were, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night.
Yeah.
Uh,
And honestly, that's the world that we live in. I'd say like for restaurants to be able to know 50%, that's actually pretty good, right? And that's crazy to think because of
right.
how, again, there's so many different places, right? There's the card networks, there's the delivery platforms. If people go through drive-through, there's all these different avenues that people come in. That's tough to capture the data if they're not part of your loyalty program. And that's something we're actively trying to look at and try and solve. But again, it's going to be a joint effort. And that's where I look at, hey, if we're all kind of hospitality people trying to solve a hospitality problem, if we come together, we can figure it out. But I think, there's a lot of players, a lot of legacy players that have too many moats around their data. And I think we talked about before we jumped on the call is like some of their infrastructure just isn't even designed to be an output of data, right? It's designed, a lot of legacy platforms are designed to be, hey, here's my moat and here's what I do, and this is you play with it or you don't. But the newer platforms are coming in with a much more open ecosystem approach, which I think is the way you should be doing things, where you can easily access data and then ultimately it's just going to help. So yeah, I think, strong agreement there on the data side. I think, to your point, the other gap I'm seeing on the data piece is that if you look for it, the data's there. The challenge is that what do you do with the data when you get it, right? Like
Right.
restaurant owners are not data scientists. The head of marketing at a restaurant is not going to sift through tons of data and dashboards, right? They want to look successful. So I think the gap that we still have to bridge on our side as tech vendors is to make it actionable as best we can. Where it's like, hey, here's the data. Now using ANML, like actually using ANML to say, here's the data, and based on the data and your historic stuff and everything that we have, here's what we recommend you should do. Here's three different scenarios that are going to attack three different parts of your customer segment. Here's what the cost is to be to run this thing, and here's what we think is the ROI. Do you want to go? And then you just go, 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 right? So I think that's
I,
the
I
gap.
agree with all that. And I think that you actually need to like push the button, you know? It's like I think that restaurant owners are so busy, like you can't give them more buttons to push,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You got to just like I think like that's the thing that I think we have to figure out together is how do you give restaurants, how do you say from the restaurant like, hey, like look, you know, how much are your customers, your LTV per customer is X, right? Give me a budget of Y, right? And then let me just push those buttons for you because like you're too busy. right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get around to go to my dashboard and push the button. Let me just push the buttons for you. We'll trigger the direct mail campaign where we target,
Yeah.
your top 10% of customers, right?
Yeah.
We'll trigger the SMS marketing campaign where we get bigger offers to your high value customers or customers you really want to convert, whatever that is. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I think that we need people like I think you guys and players like you guys that are more front end facing, right? Like pull those triggers for them. But people like us can help unlock data and so on and make
Yeah.
it easier for you to do your
100%.
thing.
Yeah. The more obvious we can get data, I think, a lot of what you mentioned is ideally where we want to go. You have to make sure your models are built right? Because I think about in my own personal life where I've had stuff be like, oh, can AI summarize this for you? And then you summarize, you're reading it and you're like, this isn't like it's good. It's not right. It's funny, actually. I don't know if you saw, there was an article I was reading this morning. It was about an Apple. I guess Apple has a new tool that summarizes news events for you, and they were beta
Mm,
testing it, and it sent someone a headline and three major headlines, and they're all wrong because it summarized it the wrong way, right? It said so the Luigi guy, right, the guy that
yeah,
yeah,
Mangione.
yeah, it said that like he shot himself or something. It was like that was one of the lines, and there was something else, and it was like okay, it's still not there yet. So I think that's some of the hesitation in the sense of like you get down this path of like if you're suggesting things and it's not done right, that it's okay. Well, I'm going to go back and well, this wasn't done right. So I think that's where there's still some nuance
I,
to
I
sorted
I
through.
also don't think I think that like I agree. Like I think AI can hallucinate and make the wrong decisions and so on. I don't think it's an AI thing. I think like people toss around AI so much. A lot of it is just plain math.
Yeah,
It's not even AI. It's just like, hey, like, look, you know, your customers spend, $1,000 on third party channel, right? Right now you're making $100, per year on that customer, right? If they order direct, you would make 300,
right,
right, per year on that customer.
right.
Are you willing to spend $50 to convert that customer? Right? It's things like that where it's not really AI. It's just like simple math
Yeah,
and making sure it works for the restaurant. I think that with AI, like people throw it around too much,
way too
right?
much.
Because
Yeah.
it's like sexy. And I think it's like, sometimes you could just use old-fashioned human intelligence too.
I couldn't agree more. I've chatted about this. I've had a few people on the show that are, really deep into the AI world, and they say like, the concept of AI is artificial intelligence, right? Like where a lot of what we talk about isn't that. Like machine learning is there, sure.
Yep.
And, the AI stuff is to your point, we're still a ways away from it, but it's exciting because I think, the restaurant industry has been it's slower than others to adopt tech for obviously for its given reasons because it's so like the impacts of it are so big and there's so much stuff going on, which gives a lot of blue ocean space for a lot of cool things to come in. And I'm interested to see kind of where the next 5 to 10 years go because I think there's still so much cool stuff that's been proven out in other industries. So it works. It's just how do we make it work in a place that is so transactional and there's so much volume and so much data, but the biggest addressable markets. So yeah, excited for us and obviously we're partnering with you guys to do some cool stuff there and pulling data, so really curious to see how things shape out the next few years. I think that's a lot of opportunity. Typically how we wrap is with a quick lightning round, so I'm going to ask you a few
Cool.
kind of fun questions here. Let's get the folks to know you a little bit better. So to start, what is your current where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Seattle, but the rest of the company's based in Philadelphia.
Got it. So in Seattle, what is your current favorite restaurant?
Oh man, I really like this restaurant called Pacha, the
Okay.
neighborhood gem in Green Lake. They have great breakfast, great lunch, great dinner. Just a great neighborhood spot. I
Nice.
think that's my favorite right now.
And
I,
what's your
I have to think about it more. Go ahead.
you got a favorite dish there? Like what's your go-to there?
Oh, my go-to there. I mean, they have a really good breakfast burrito if it's breakfast, right? They got a good chicken sandwich at lunch. Got a good chicken dinner. I'm trying to think. There's other restaurants too that I like a lot, but that's probably my go-to.
Got it.
Like daily, like every other day kind of spot.
In your opinion, what's the best food city in the world?
Oh man, best food city in the world. That's a big one. I mean, probably New York. I just
Yeah.
think, New York, I went to a Michelin star Indian restaurant there once called Janoon. I mean, delicious. If you like Indian food, I mean, it was such a great restaurant. And New York has a restaurant like that for every cuisine, right? So
Yeah.
I would probably say New York.
Okay. If you were to turn back the hands of time and you were a delivery driver, would you be a scooter guy or a car guy?
Car guy.
Why?
I mean, scooter guy, like in the cold, not a lot of fun, you know? You can do more deliveries per hour and it's more efficient. So you could probably make more money on a scooter. But I mean, I don't know. I think the comfort of a car,
Yeah. Safer too, for sure. A lot of crazy drivers out there.
safer. I don't trust drivers. Like, I don't bike on the road. I love to bike, but I don't want to get hit by some random car driver.
Yeah. Yeah. What is, going into next year, what is something, we could talk about kind of the tech side in your personal life, use on the tech side that really excites you kind of going to next year or in the future that from a tech perspective, again, it doesn't have to be about hospitality, but what's some new tech you're seeing either next year or in the upcoming years that you're going to be like, hey, this is something I'm going to use and I'm really looking forward to this.
I think a really interesting tech play, which I don't have a firm opinion on, good or bad. But when you think about phone customer support today, like actually, like it's pretty terrible. Today I had a call, just this morning I had a call where I ordered my wedding ring from because it sized a little bit too tight. And they didn't answer the call, right? And I think that AI phone support is going to be so much better, in my
Mm,
opinion, as long as I can still feel like I'm talking to a human, right? And I can get through right away, and I don't have to go through the endless press one for this, and then two
yeah,
for that, and then three
yeah.
for that's the worst, right? So that's something I'm excited for. Just to I mean, it's crazy how much money is spent on supporting phone support. I think that's going to be great for every industry, not just restaurants. Yeah, it's like, lots of jobs will get displaced, but I'm sure that I'm a believer that the economy like will create new jobs. And I can tell you as like being in a call center and operating a call center, it's one of the most stressful jobs in the world.
Yeah, I did too.
Um,
That's one of my first jobs.
Brutal,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like that's a job that like humans shouldn't do anyways, right? It's like too stressful for a human.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll never forget those days. Very humbling to think back to those days. But to your point, yeah, it's the worst. But you did it because, hey, this is a job and go do it. But it was always seen as a temporary thing anyways, right?
Right?
And no, and I mean, I'm not going to generalize, but as far as I know, in the group that I was working with, like no one was thrilled to be there. They were doing it because they got paid. But it's like, you know what I mean? It's not like they're dying for this company where
It's
they're going
not, I doubt it. It's not like a zone of genius for like anyone. Like no one like has like it's not they no one's like has fun doing it. And I
to.
think that when you do jobs, you should try to find jobs that you're good at and you enjoy, right? You can't just be good at it and not enjoy it. And you can't enjoy it and not get paid. So you have to like find that right
Yeah.
mix.
Yeah. Oh man, well, hey, thanks again for jumping on. Any last words before we part here?
I got nothing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey, Andrew, thanks again for jumping on. If folks do want to get in touch with you to chat, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, just email Andrew at firstdelivery.com. I check all my emails. That's the
Cool.
best.
Love it.
And go from there.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, excited to see what you guys continue doing. Excited to obviously be a good partner and excited to try and hopefully have a better fantasy season next year than we did this year because this year was a tough one, especially for me, just losing the quarters this week. So that was tough. But appreciate you jumping on. Big shout out to what you guys are doing over there. And yeah, this is another episode of Data Delicacies. If you have any questions for me, reach out to me at Arun Kumar or find us on our website or on LinkedIn where we're active. And for those listening, this is about the holiday time. So happy holidays, be safe, and happy new year. We'll chat soon. Peace.